Everyone. Thank you for joining us for our webinar on how to apply the Bowtie method in Riskrunner. The goal is to have, we have an hour planned, but we don't want to use it an hour long of me sending information at you. So I'll try to get through it in about 25 to 35 minutes tops, so that we can have some time at the end for discussion if everybody wants. And otherwise, I guess everybody has quite a busy life. So I'll probably want to get back to the office. So my name is Kevin Toussaint. I am a junior risk consultant here at Resilium. We are a barrier-based risk management company in the Netherlands, located in a, for once, very sunny Zoetermeer. So I had to close the blinds as to not be blinded. So what we'll be discussing today is just what are bow ties, why they can be useful, possibly for your organization. We'll be showing a little bit through the talk and how to do this in our own software, Riskrunner. So where do bow ties originate from? I could go into the history, which is almost 50 years old at this point. It started around in 1974, but I think nobody here is looking for a history lesson. So I think I'll just look at the bow tie parents, which are the fault tree and the event tree. The fault tree focuses very much on how you can lose control over your operations, whereas an event tree looks more like what is happening when you have lost control over your situation. And both these things are something that you need to consider when you're planning out your operation. You're planning out how to manage the risks around them. And so around 2004, this visual really became the standing example of what we now consider bow ties. It really came forth from Wolters Kluwer's or Nederland's Bowtie XP software, and this is the image that everybody has in our mind, typically when we talk about bow ties. So on the left side, we have how we start losing control over our operation. On the right side, what is happening when we have lost control. I'll be delving into this a little bit deeper in a minute. But why would you want to use this kind of visual? It's because very often risk information and such is handed to us in HAZID tables. And these tables are, of course, extremely useful, but for high-level risk, or better said, for really risky situations, operations where we know that we could have catastrophic events, we don't necessarily want just a flat table that explains everything with one flavor, in essence. Everything here is shaved over one cone. And we don't want that. We want to get more of an idea of what we see in the bow tie underneath this table is some more in-depth considerations of how these various items interact and where they become active. Whereas if we have to look at driving a car here in the HAZID table, we see all these threats can cause us to lose control over the car, and the barriers are there to help us prevent these escalations, but we don't necessarily see when or where they are of importance. And the bow tie is able to show us that more significantly. The advantage of bow ties is that they can help you a lot with really looking at the scope that is useful for you within that point in time. Because you can zoom these out to a really high level bow tie where you get very generic information, really start talking on like high corporate levels, like, okay, I have an overview of how this operation is working, kind of. I just need to know the broad strokes. But if you then are really down with the boots on the ground, you're really busy with the work, possibly you want to have a bit more of a deeper level, a deeper insight into how things are going. And so you'll be starting to look at more condensed bow ties, or more, better said, zoomed in bow ties, where you're really just looking at a small bit of the operation and you really get detailed information. That's essentially where we can look at our zoom level if we go up or down. But at the same time, we can also start looking more towards the past or towards the future of an event. Are we looking more at our information less in a flat table, but are we saying, okay, what can start building up this escalation, or what is really going to happen at the back end of this escalation. So there are a couple terms that you have already seen on screen now with the current day Bowtie: threats, barriers, hazards, top events, and consequences. Well, I saw that some of you have already some experience with Bowties, so you probably have no need for me to really go deep into all the definitions, but just to make sure that everybody is on one line, I want to quickly go through them. So for hazards, we're really looking at activities or operations that carry a potential to cause harm. So it's not necessarily that a hazard, as we in normal speaking language consider something that's really dangerously happening right now. It's more of that it's something that can cause harm if something were to go wrong. So we would be looking something towards this. Well, I think everything in the yellow and black boxes are the hazards here. And none of these necessarily are dangerous something to do, like storing substances, or more in detail, storage of crude oil in an atmospheric tank. It's not necessarily a dangerous thing, but I think we all can say with certainty is that these, if something were to go wrong, very much carry a dangerous potential. So that's what hazards are really about. It's the potential of harm. And so to give a quick idea of how to discuss, how to talk about that, is we have a couple examples here. So in each row, we have something that stands out as not being a true hazard, even though we would consider it to be a dangerous thing. So for instance, in the first row, we have uncontrolled fires, birds around an aerodrome, and hydrogen sulfide in a storage tank. Well, birds around an aerodrome and hydrogen being stored in a storage tank are, of course, part of our operation, sadly enough, and that's standard, but nothing is really going wrong, whereas an uncontrolled fire very much is going wrong. The same is in the next line. Using explosives sounds like a terribly dangerous operation, because it is. However, nothing bad is happening, so we still consider it a threat, or hazard, sorry. The same is for driving a car, which is something we'll be delving deeper into later on in this webinar. And the negative stories in the press are, of course, us already having lost control over our situation. The top event, which is like this big yellow-orange ball that you saw in the middle of the boat up to now, is all about when we start losing control over our hazard. So how we can look at that is here. We have a line of 5 potential top events here, and if you guys could just shout out which of these you'd consider to be the top event, with this explanation in mind. So it's when we lose control over our hazard. What would you say would be the top event here?
Hi Kevin, it's Stuart. I'm going to go with loss of containment as a starter.
Yeah, very much so. Loss of containment is very clearly a top event here for our operations. But as you can maybe already see with that little line under there saying point in time, is that depending on our context from our organization or how I want to look at these operations, all of these are potential top events. So looking at water residue in a tank, well, if I am the cleaning department and I didn't do my work properly, I possibly lost water residue in that tank, which would be a top event. That could lead to corrosion, which would be a problem for the maintenance department because they didn't do their hazardous work correctly. They have lost control somewhere, corrosion is starting to build up. And the same can be said for the other two as well. Is that depending on how we look at things, depending on how we think about things, we need to start changing our scope and make the Bowtie fit to that scope. And that's why Bowtie is such useful tools, because it's versatile. We can, adapt it. But at the same time, it's not necessarily a big hammer. It's a sledgehammer essentially that you can use for a lot of different things, but you want to use it for like your big topic issues. If we then start looking more towards the left side of the Bowtie, we had our blue boxes, our threats. So those threats are the causes for a top event, and each threat needs to be able to cause the top event by itself. And how we would typically talk about that is here. We have 2 options: a failure of ABS and the slippery road conditions. So if you think that the failure of the ABS is the proper threat here for you losing control over your vehicle, please put a 1 in the chat. And if you think it's the slippery road conditions that are causing you to lose control of your vehicle, please put a 2 in the chat, just so I can see how you guys think about it. Let's have a look. Let's see what's popping up. I see a 2, I see a 2, 2. I see a lot of 2s passing by for now. Nobody's considering the failure of the ABS. It's wonderful. I'm seemingly can't pull the rug over your eyes here. It's very clearly it's the slippery road conditions. These are things that can cause us to lose control of our car. Whereas the failure of the ABS, it's a safety system that suddenly isn't working anymore. It doesn't mean that I'm suddenly going to spin out and hit something. No, it's just our safety system breaking down. And it's a very important thing for threat, is that we never consider them to be failures of safety systems. So the ABS failing, the brakes failing, the airbags failing are never really threats. They are, are barriers that suddenly don't work anymore. So consequences then, on the other hand, we go all the way to the right side of our bow ties. Now we're really starting to talk about negative impacts. So these unwanted events caused by the top event. And it's very important that when we talk about consequences, that we don't start talking in the damages consideration. So not necessarily into terms of fatalities or environmental or equipment damages. These are things that we use to categorize our risk matrices. So we should more look towards about what kind of things are happening. So an oil spill into the sea would be a degree of environmental damage, or smoke inhalation or impacts would be our degree of injury, making it so that different events get different scalings on our risk matrices. I think also one of the important things here is that I don't show here nicely, is that if we look back to, just gonna scroll back a little, is that some consequences can maybe be considered very high level. So the blunt impact of something, blunt impact of our lost over the item that we lose control over. But if we start going down in our zoom level, so we can say blunt impact to a person, blunt impact to equipment or to infrastructure, is that we start zooming out not necessarily only on the granularity of our top events and our hazards, but also on the granularity of the consequences and such. Back. So consequences, that. So the barriers, now we're really starting to get into how the things that we need to plan out, the things that we need to really start making use of. And I think one of the most important quotes that I had to learn very early about in the risk management career was from Scott from 2006. Safety barriers are physical and or non-physical means planned to prevent, control, or mitigate underside events or accidents. And I think if this is something that you really incorporate when talking about barriers, you're going to have a much better time. Because I'm not going to go through all the topics here, but especially the focus on having your safety being broad items that you can use in many different items, security or quality. It's really about what am I putting in place to get out these physical or non-physical harms that could hurt my people or my equipment. And I think also the important part is the plan. Barriers are not something that just happen. If I go on my lunch break and I see, oh, there's a fire over there, I'm going to go deal with it. That's not a barrier. A barrier would be a fire alarm that's able to detect that the fire is going on. It's able to indicate, okay, this is not smoke, for instance, that we're not supposed to have here. I'm going to release a signal now to get people warned about what's happening. And we go towards how to prevent and control and mitigate these events. All right, so this has now been, I think, long enough of me trying to send information at you. I think it's time to get a little bit more in a back and forth. So what I want to do is now actually switch over to Riskrunner. So here we are in our Riskrunner environment, my personal Riskrunner environment. And I have here already a few examples of top events, threats, controls or barriers, and consequences all around the hazard of driving a vehicle. And I put these in to have a little bit of a starting talking point. However, from here, I would say, let's get a little bit more in the back and forth instead. So if I take my top event, I want to start creating a bow tie, and I just get these threads already in here. From here, are there any other threads that you guys would like to have a back and forth about to add here? So just shout out or put them in the chat. As I said, I want to have not necessarily a 1 hour lecture, but more of a quick lecture with a little bit of a talking back and forth. So feel free to just speak up.
Possibly a human error related one, I think, is a common one these days. Use of devices or distracted by devices.
All right, so distraction by devices. So this is actually something that we already have in our dictionary of threats essentially here. So driver loss of attention, so possibly due to the phone or controlling your radio. You don't like the song that's on, so you quickly want to go to a different station. This is one of the advantages of Riskrunner, is that when you start using it, you start building out this huge library of definitions. And sometimes, as you can see here, I don't have it defined in my current current assessment yet. However, it's in my library, so I can easily pull that information in and make use of that. So perfect example, I would say. Anything else that someone would like to throw in? Any consequences that would be interesting to talk about? So here I have crashed into another vehicle or motionless object. There's trees always jumping in front of us, and or the driver impacting the internals of the vehicle. Any other consequences that would be interesting to look at for you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So a consequence of losing control over the vehicle could be just health impact to the driver. You could get yourself hurt if you're behind the wheel.
So yeah, in that case, we're looking again more towards the damage. In that case, we're talking about the deterioration of the driver's health. So that would fall more as a result of the event of the driver impacting the internals of the vehicle, or just the vehicle crushing the person, perhaps. So that is more of a degree of consequence instead of an actual proper consequence itself. But thank you for bringing it forth. So yeah, driving into water I see pop up. That's another one that we can add here. See, this one isn't added into our environment yet, so this is actually handy. I can say driving into the water, especially here in the Netherlands. Netherlands has a lot of water to get stuck in. Let's say it like that, get stuck in. So I put this into my definition for this consequence. So later on, if someone else wants to make use of this, they can have a look at the library, see that's in there, and see what we mean with it. But okay, so let's start focusing instead of on threats and consequences. Let's have a talk about mitigative or preventative controls that we can put in place. So one of the features that we have in Riskrunner now is you can see I have a bit of a closer traditional view on the Bowtie tool. And I can say that I want to focus on the left side of the Bowtie, so the preventative side. I can take away my mitigative side, just focus on preventative. I have a couple controls already in place. So from experience, I can say that ABS is very useful for slippery road conditions. Lane departure system could be good for losing your attention, warns you that something is happening. However, things like defensive driving could be good for an intoxicated driver, breath alcohol as well. However, airbag doesn't really fit to this side yet. Are there any other barriers or controls that you guys think would be good to add on a preventative side of a bow tie?
Possibly around the slippery road conditions, you would consider your travel policy. So how do you risk assess? So I'm thinking about like actual like business driving now, not just kind of public. Yeah. So what's your policy? How do you risk assess and plan your journeys? And if there's any bad weather, any foreseeable bad weather, you would manage accordingly.
So very good. So travel policies in a corporate setting, saying that if my weather report shows that there's a significant risk, some blizzards or extremely high temperatures, extreme rainfall, those kinds of things, you say, okay, it's not safe for my employees to travel now. I'm going to put into my policy that they don't need to come to the office or they shouldn't be going on business trips with these kinds of conditions. So I can say that my company is already doing this. We're doing great here at Resilium. We're saying that can't travel with these terrible circumstances. They're trying to keep us safe. So I say that it's implemented. I put it in there and have a travel policy here. So one of the handy things with Riskrunner is that I can add different extra controls from the top of here. I can even see what is already available in my library. I have a list of different items. So for instance, for slippery road conditions, defensive driving would be another good, would also be good. So it's not just for the intoxicated driving of other people or of myself. I can put defensive driving in here to be good for slippery road conditions as well. So next to our travel policies, are there any other barriers that people think would be good for this? Otherwise, we're going over to the mitigative side of the story. No? All right, great. So just before we jump over to the mitigative side, I think it's handy to talk about the difference between these two barriers here. So right now, of course, the ABS and travel policies are very different in nature. But that's not what I want to focus at. It's the fact that the ABS has a red marking here and the travel policies don't. So one of the things that I did with travel policies is say that it's already implemented in my organization. We're already doing this. However, seemingly we're all driving in cars that are ancient and don't have ABS yet. So if we decide to upgrade our car park, I can go to that definition and I can say we upgraded our car park. That's how we write car park. We have this now actually done. We can see that marking disappear and my bow tie is now showing me as a consultant or someone who is responsible for maintenance or the EHS department. I now see is that we have taken care of this barrier. We now have it fixed. We don't need to keep focusing on it. However, we don't have that modern of a car park, so we don't have the lane departure system yet. So I want to make sure is that we add an action on that and say, okay, check for upgrading to warning system. I can put it as an action, save that to my organization, and have that in there as an option for me to look at in the future. It's like, okay, I don't have this lane departure warning system ongoing in my organization yet. What should I be doing? Oh, I have a marking that tells me there's a plan for this. There's an action related to it. Right now, it's not given to anyone. There's no deadline on it. So I can switch that over, give it to someone else in my organization. Okay, so now switching to the right side. Of course, we have the airbag, great for impacting the inside of the vehicle, but also good for when you crash into another vehicle. It's not just you losing control and swerving and being flung around in there. It's also for when you impact something, you should have that airbag present. So I don't need to go over the control section here, the quick add. I can go over the consequence itself and add it from there. course, these should be implemented with using, the modern car park that we talked about earlier. But for now, we'll leave it as this is. Are there any other mitigative barriers that you guys think, oh, these are good to add? Well, it seems that we love taking risks. Okay, well, if there's not necessarily more that you guys want to add from here. Oh, I see you wearing a seatbelt. Yeah, very important. Kind of illegal not to do. So I'm just going to imagine that I already have a seatbelt control in my library. I'm just going to assume, but I don't know how I have it properly defined. Sometimes memory fails me. So I'm just going to type in seatbelt, and I see, oh, I have a seatbelt barrier. If I'd started wearing it with what or where, probably would have found it easier, but an easy quick search allows me to find my barriers that are already in my library, and from there I can add it. What we don't have at the moment is an option to copy and drag. Right now we have a drag and drop only, but in one of our future updates, we're going to have very nice options that instead of moving it around, by dragging it, you can also copy it to new places. So we could add this everywhere. If we then also start thinking, okay, I'm wearing my seatbelt, I'm driving into the water, I would also need to add things like cutters, so I can cut my seatbelt off me. So those would be other barriers that we can add, and we can build out our bow tie as small and as big as we want. But we have a small example here of how our bow tie could look. Of course, I have a built out version of this with a little bit more information. Here I have many more threads. I have many more consequences added to it with more barriers around it. The important part is to think that it's not necessarily that this bigger bow tie is better than the smaller bow tie. It's important to think about which bow tie is good for me in my position or for our organization. And that's one of the things that are really it's really great about Riskrunner is that you can have these things existing next to each other. You can make them relate them to different owners and give an idea of really handing people the information that is really useful for them. So we don't necessarily want you to have feel limited in building just one bow tie and making that fit everything. It's more the easy way of using existing definitions and building out your library and building bow ties that are suitable for that part of your organization. So yeah, that was just about, I think, the 25 to 28 minute mark that I was aiming for to keep it a bit crisp. Are there any questions right now? Is anything that popped up where you're thinking, okay, I have some experience with bow tie, but this is a bit different from what I'm used to, or just general questions about what you've seen in the last half hour? What is anything? Please shoot. Stuart, please go ahead.
Thanks for that, Kevin. I've been monitoring Riskrunner for a while because I'm actually interested in how this is developing into a real powerful tool. So this kind of version of where you're at, I find really useful because of the visual aspect of it. I think previous revisions were a bit more like table type records, but this is actually like a bow tie. So it's kind of the optics of it help people to absorb what's there. So I think it's a good step forward.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for the compliments. I completely agree with you. One of the reasons why Bowtie is such a useful tool is because of that visual sense, is that people can essentially naturally follow along with the event and see where escalations can happen or where things need to jump in to really prevent that. So yeah, so here, especially on our desktop view, like on the big screen, this view nicely shows the traditional sense of a bow tie. Of course, the The data model of Bowtie was already in there with the list view, but yeah, I agree with you. This looks very nice. So I would say, Alex, very well done. Anyone else? Any questions? Any remarks? Any discussion points? You know. See someone typing.
Hi,
John.
I was just looking at the Bowtie. Is escalation factor something that you plan on adding in, or is that?
So that's a good question. So escalation factors, I press edit here, and I'm gonna jump into this a little bit bigger Bowtie. Escalation factors is definitely something that we're looking at. In one of our, I think not in the most recent update, but in the update before that, we added a barrier analysis function. So if I go into my definition of this, okay, this is terrible. I'm not going to go into periodic examination. I'm going into ABS. Let's do that. I go into ABS, I say edit the control analysis, and what I now have is a way of adding degradation and control component factors. So degradation factors are, I think, what are most commonly known as escalation factors. Things that are going to make this barrier fail more easily. So in the sense of the ABS, it would probably be equipment damage, something has happened to it, or so it's like we're talking about really hardware damage, or if this is more towards some software related thing, software damage, software issues, who knows. These are things that are going to make this barrier function less well. However, there are probably also items that are going to make it function better. So we have or ensure that the barrier keeps working. So we have the maintenance, yeah, right, wrote it correctly. Maintenance schedule, or continuous software diagnosis, continuous software diagnosis. I'm just adding those. We have those different items in there to. Why are you not adding? Oh, there we go. We have those different items in there to ensure that our barrier works, or things that can degrade its function. So what I can say is that if I have continuous software diagnosis, that is to ensure that my software issues are not going to become a problem, or that my equipment damage, I can see something is deteriorating here in my maintenance schedule. I pick that up and I can see that. So if I now save this, you see that this little marker here pops up, and that is what allows us to see, okay, what do we have in place to tackle these different things? And right here, we're starting to, you could essentially under each barrier, as far as you want, build out a small tree that shows what components are we putting into this barrier to keep it working, and what components have we identified that could make this fail. So for if we're talking about defensive driving, for instance, that could be specialized training, and then and so forth and so forth. That we have so we have a system in there to talk about escalation factors and such. Does that answer your question, John?
Yeah, that's really good. Thank you.
All right, fantastic. Yeah. Also, if anyone has questions that they think might require more time or anything, please send me an email, and we can like set up a meeting and just dive deeper into this. So you can try out maybe also a bit yourself, just to tinker and see how it is. Please contact me and we'll set that up for you. Are there any other questions? No, it seems not. In that case, I'm going to thank everyone for their time. I also, as said, we're going to keep this, I'm not going to keep you for the full hour. Want to keep this nice and crisp. If anything pops up, please contact us. We're easy to reach under info@resilium.com. But you can also contact me personally at Kevin@resilium.group, or actually info@resilium.group, sorry. And we'll try to help you. If you want to try out Riskrunner, we can set that up for you so that you can have a month to try it out a bit yourself. Or if you want to talk a bit more about what possibilities there are, please hit us up and we'll see how we can help you with it. And other than that, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.
All right. And in that case, yeah, have a wonderful day.